It's nice being able to go to the beach sometimes. Like that was kind of a big thing. Well, my name is Elise Tranquina. I am from Marietta, Georgia, and went to Pope High School, which is a public school. And there were about 520, 530 people in my graduating class, I think. And I just graduated from the University of Florida in 2022. I think I took 13 by the end of high school, but they were kind of spread out through like freshman and senior year, mostly in senior and junior year, but then some in freshman and sophomore year too. Mostly my parents, but we were all in the Globalization Academy. It was kind of like a little program that had a focus on social studies and language, so we had a bit more of a structured set of classes, so that kind of dictated which ones we took. So we kind of went into it knowing we were going to be taking advanced like economics classes, US history, all those AP classes, and then like we had a language and language arts that we would just take throughout. So it was a bit more structured, so probably that program kind of impacted which classes I took, and also just my parents. I did cross country for all 4 years, lacrosse for freshman and sophomore year, I think. And then I was on the swim team freshman year and junior year. I was in a couple clubs, student government, a couple service clubs. I played cello for a good bit of my high school time. So I was in the orchestra. Probably the second half of junior year. That was when everyone started thinking about taking the SAT or ACT. It wasn't really on my mind until junior year. Moderately involved. I felt like I was mostly responsible for getting everything in by myself, but they definitely helped me with like ACT prep and setting up tours for certain schools. But I was responsible for like my application, my essays, my deadlines and stuff like that. But they were helpful. They would check in every now and then with that stuff. I think the worst part, probably the stress about the ACT and SAT. I don't like standardized tests very much. They're not really my thing. I ended up doing okay on them. Best part is probably touring the schools. I always had fun going and seeing them and like imagining what it would be like if you were actually a student there. Was probably the ACT. I'm not the best with deadlines. I'm kind of a last minute kind of person. So most of my applications I would submit like, not on the last day that they were due, but like within the last few days that I could submit them, typically. So probably the timing of it, and also just once you get into the swing of senior year, I always felt really busy with like my senior year high school activities or like my friends. So I think I wish I'd started my applications earlier, because then I would have like certain weeks where I was rushed to get everything in, but I also had all my senior year life going on. Mm-hmm. But yeah, the deadlines thing was definitely an issue for me. I mean, everything was fine. It was nothing crazy. I probably would have liked to have help like keeping up with my certain deadlines and just like having more of a plan for when I was going to get things submitted, because I never really did. I just kind of like winged it every time. So that would have been good to probably have some more like structure with my application process. Only took the ACT. I did a mock SAT and a mock ACT, and I did better on my mock ACT, so I just focused on that one. And I took the ACT 2 times. I think I took one in the summer and then one early fall of senior year. My second one was in early fall. For my first ACT, I did go to this kind of a tutoring place, but I would go once a week for like an hour, and it honestly wasn't that helpful for me just because I would kind of like forget. I wasn't really studying on my own. So I would just like relied on whatever that hour that I would spend there. For my second ACT, my mom had helped me sign up for this like boot camp type thing where it was like 3 or 4 days in a row. You would go for several hours a day and you would do it like the week right before you went and took your test. So I did like a boot camp type thing, and that one was really helpful because it was like test taking strategies. I was kind of lazy. I think I would have applied to more schools. Honestly, I just didn't want to fill out that many applications. I think I'd done a couple and I was like, oh, that's fine. I only applied to 3 schools. I picked ones that I knew were like relatively good schools. I didn't want to go too far away. Price, location, those kinds of things. But I should have just sent out my Common App to like a couple other schools. Visited UGA and then FSU and UF, and those were the 3 schools that I applied to. But I think I visited all 3 of them at the end of my junior year. For me, my environment is really important. When I did my tours, I immediately liked Gainesville. Like when I saw the school, I just felt really good about it. So I think the environment and like the city, kind of like the feel to the city is important to me. Main factor was my major, which I wanted to do nursing. So that was a big draw for me, just like my major and what I wanted to do. I kind of wanted to get away from Marietta area. I didn't want to go too far. I felt like it was like a time for me to branch out and like it was my time to move somewhere. And I moved here and I really didn't know like anybody at all. So it was a big change, but it ended up being really worth it and like a really good experience and a really good decision to come here. I've loved it a lot. That was the main thing. I also just really loved the feel of the school. It's about 5 hours from my home. It's kind of far, but it was like a nice distance for me. My mom actually went here too, and she loved it. Kind of just wanted to get out of Georgia, make a big move. It was weird just packing everything up and being like, I'm not gonna be back here for a few months because I lived in the same house in the same city for my whole life. So it was definitely strange feeling like you're leaving home and just moving into like some random little room that you're sharing with another 18-year-old girl. I mean, it was strange, and I didn't know anybody really at the school. It was just weird saying bye to like my family, my dogs. I had a boyfriend at the time as well, so I'd say bye to him. It was strange at first, but I did join a sorority, which like helped me meet people pretty fast. I really wanted to, but with my nursing curriculum, it was like not really possible for me to. I wanted to, but I did not get the chance to. And then COVID happened and that kind of complicated things further, so. But I really wanted to, just didn't get to. Yeah, so I was in a sorority. I was in a couple clubs here and there, kind of like health-related clubs. I was in like a muscular dystrophy club that helped raise funds for people with muscular dystrophy. I did dance marathon for a little while. I helped raise some money for that. In nursing school, we had like a nurses leading change club, which was kind of about like competent nursing care that like addresses diverse populations kind of. Freshman year was pretty easy. I just expected college to be really hard because in high school, I feel like all my AP professors would say like, they just told us, they would kind of scare us and tell us it was going to be so difficult and we'd be on our own and blah, blah, blah. But I didn't find my freshman year very difficult at all. I think they started to definitely get harder once I started my nursing classes, just because they required a lot of studying. But I mean, they were all manageable. I guess first part of college was easier than I expected, but nursing was probably about what I expected or harder than I expected. I really didn't know what I was getting myself into, so my expectations were pretty wide open. It's kind of changed the way I see it over the last few years. Like when I first started out, I didn't have a car. I just walked everywhere, didn't know anybody at all. So it felt like a really just big school, and I knew it was gonna feel big because it is a really big school. But then I think throughout the other couple years, like you settle in, you find your people, and it's turned it, like it feels almost more like home to me now than my home in like Marietta, Georgia. Like I prefer to be here now usually. I expected to have fun, which I did. And I expected it to be challenging, which it was, but I didn't expect to. It's kind of hard to like foresee how much you really will love it and like how much you do grow from it. It's been like a very, very impactful thing being here. I was concerned with like where I would be living for the next 4 years, but I think that thinking about location actually is really important, and I kind of just got lucky like picking a place that I ended up loving so much. But I do think it's important to pick a city where you feel at home, because it's a big change. It's important to like figure out what matters most to you about a school, like the rigor or major, location, price, and then you kind of have to align that with what schools are like options and feasible for you. I had never really like applied to things before. Like I don't think I'd had a real job, and I never filled out an application like that. I wish I had more structure, I think, to that process, because I was kind of, like I said, I was kind of winging it for the applications, especially with my essays. I found it really valuable being in, like, my Globalization Academy was really nice because it was kind of like a tight-knit group. And I think the same with like team sports. It's nice to like have a smaller amount of group of people to like do things with, especially if you have such a big school. Even though high school can feel kind of overwhelming, it's still important to like get yourself into sports or clubs or something, or whatever you're into, orchestra or theater or whatever it is. But I would definitely try to join those things. And it also is really nice to have those things to give yourself a good time while you're there, but also it's really nice to have those things to put on a resume later on, just like slowly building a resume. All of the grades go by really fast. Everybody says that probably, but it goes by fast, and you should try to enjoy it. It's kind of hard to like enjoy it and be present with it and also be thinking about college in the future, because there's like so much more coming. But it goes by fast, and it's like a very unique time in your life. The college process did stress me out a good bit. Like even after I had gotten into my schools, I was really torn between University of Florida and UGA. I couldn't figure out which one I wanted to pick. And it took me like a month before I was able to narrow it down and just kind of like pull the trigger and like choose. So I would say for 12th graders, like it makes sense to be like scared about it because it's a pretty big thing, but also like you just kind of have to go with it and like go with your gut, and like trust it'll work out, and it probably will. Sorry if those answers were too long.
No,
I just realized
great.
I talked for like 30 minutes.
No, you're